It says we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Hello! This is exciting. So far, I'm watching the YouTube page and it is not yet appearing,
Okay.
but we're on.
It says we're live.
Yay, we're
I can
here.
see everybody's chat now. Okay. One Stop Co-op Shop is here. And oh man, so fun. King Graham Johnson, also known as Andrew Ronzino. Ronzino, I think. Yeah. Uh, so glad everybody's here. Um, Sorry, it took us a lot to get going. So my brain is in like stream keys and stuff like that. Hello, welcome to our live stream. I'm sorry that we are 11 minutes late, but we are so glad to be able to talk with you today. So the goal of today is just to have a live Q&A. Of course, I'm joined by Ira Faye. I think you're this way.
Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here. Thanks for your patience with the technical difficulties, but we'll get through lots of questions and answers.
Yeah. Um, so we format wise, we'll take questions from the chat as well as people were able to um, submit questions to our Google form, and so we'll kind of do a mix. So yeah, let's see. My Google form died, so I have to pull that back up. Do you have one of the questions there?
Yeah. So I'll say anybody in chat, if you have a question, you can just type it in chat and we'll try and get to it. But in the interim, we can start with um, some questions we got on the Google form. Is it the case that our audio is okay for everybody in chat? Can you hear us okay?
That is a great question.
All right, let's start with this question from Don Woody. How do you feel the pace of the game will be? Will players feel involved, or will there be a lot of waiting on each other to do events, etc.? So we definitely have an answer to that. Cody, do you want to answer or me?
Yeah, you said it. Dawn was the name.
Don,
Thank you.
D-O-N, Don.
Yeah, thank you, Don. Yes, Ira and I have spent a lot of time. Um, we play a lot of games, and downtime is something that we feel like is a fun killer. And so Arydia has definitely been designed um, with the thought of how can we streamline the process? How can we get you doing the things that you want to be doing on your turn? And how can we have turns flowing at a good rate? And so these are, I feel like everything like that is a foundation that we've built. We've made so many decisions based on that of like, well, we really don't want if we give too many actions to players on a turn, like that can feel good, but then if someone's turn takes too long to get around to the other people's turns, that doesn't feel good. So designing um, systems, all the player skills are designed around this idea of like, well, we don't want that to take too long. The monster turns has been a really big point where early on we decided we want combat to be 80% of the time, maybe even 90% of the time, you are doing player turn stuff. Like, here's cool stuff that you are doing to the monsters. And then on the monster turns, we flip a card, the monsters do a thing, and then you're back into the action of doing like the fun stuff that you want to do. And so I feel like a lot of our consideration has been towards this. Ira, would you agree?
Yeah, I think that was a great answer for sure. We've been thinking about that throughout.
For sure. Thank you, Don.
All right, another question. This is from Shane, and I'm just going to continue to look in chat,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this is a question from Shane. Also, chat, I noticed you said my audio was a little tinny. I'm not sure exactly how to fix that. Maybe I'll just, if I'm closer to the mic, maybe it helps.
I can
Um,
try and crank your volume. Let me think.
it wasn't that it was too loud or too soft. It was just they said tinny or robotic.
That's
In
weird.
any case, let's ask this question from
Okay,
Shane.
okay, okay.
What manufacturer are you using for your custom dice, and will the dice be engraved?
Yeah, so we're using the same manufacturer that we've been with for our other games, which is Panda Game Manufacturing. They're based in Canada with a manufacturing warehouse, I think, in Shenzhen, China. Um, they've been really, really good partners, and they offer lots of options for dice. Currently, we're looking at doing engraved dice, just because they have really good durability and good visibility, and it's nice to like feel the texture of the pattern. Um, the dice, these are prototype dice. You can see they have like very intricate, sort of like fine lines on these. We have a design that kind of basically blows these patterns up and then thickens the lines up. And I'm thinking these squares will all be engraved. So that's going to be part of, like, once we get our final files to Panda, that'll be one of the things where they will send us prototypes of the dice. We'll put pictures on the Kickstarter updates, and you'll get to follow along. But yes, engraved, beautiful dice.
Nice. Um, all right, well, let's keep going. We started late, so we're gonna try and zoom through a bunch of things.
Sounds good.
Uh, okay, so this is a question from Andrew Austin.
Okay.
And the question is, are you seeing a meta class build for any or all classes as you move deeper into campaign play? And if so, what is your philosophy to address this issue to keep classes from becoming railroaded or stale? Um,
Yeah.
so
Ira, do you? I
maybe,
feel like you do a lot of work in the campaign or in the combat realm. Do you want to? Yeah, go for it.
yeah, yeah. So when I hear like meta class build, I guess I think what you're asking is there like one best like path? You have these skill trees, right? Each path has you start with two skills at the beginning of the campaign, and then you have 12 different skills that you can unlock as you play through the campaign. And
In
I guess
addition,
the
in
question
addition to
is,
your character skill.
right, and you have a character skill,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
there are a bunch of different characters that you can choose from. So there are really a lot of permutations in terms of how you can build your particular character for that particular class. So
yeah,
just like from a permutation standpoint, just from a randomness standpoint, like there are tons of permutations. And the other thing that I want to point out is even if we both agree, and I'm not sure that we would, even if you and another player agree that like at level 7, this is really the absolute best warrior build, and I don't think everybody will agree on that. But even if you do, you could have easily taken a different path through your skill tree to get to that point at level 7 because you're not just playing it at level 7, you're playing it at level 1, level 2, all the way up, all the way through. And so your choices at each level up make a difference for what your options will be later. And I think that adds to an interesting level of character customization as you play the game. I will say that our most dedicated playtesters, Alex and Luke, we asked them at one point to go through and sort of rate the different skills, like just from a power level. And there was disagreement. There was wide disagreement. I mean, there was some consensus, but there was also disagreement, which to me represents there isn't an optimal build. Certainly, we're making some later level skills more powerful than earlier level skills, but that's intentional
yeah.
to have character growth. So I guess to answer your question, we're very cognizant of this. There are a lot of permutations. You're definitely not railroaded into a particular way of doing your character. You'll have a lot of choices as you go.
I couldn't have said it better, Ira. I think that is absolutely right. Um, and I feel like Alex and Luke are always talking about like, oh, I'm playing like a trap rogue or I'm playing a poison rogue, and like coming at it reminded me kind of like of Diablo 2 back in the day, of just like you can like focus a character around like a certain play style, or like you can be more like a jack of all trades, and I really like the flexibility of the skill system, I think is it's great.
Yeah. And I'm noticing a couple things in chat as we're talking. One,
Oh yeah.
shout out to Alex, who's actually in chat right now. So hi Alex, thanks for
Hey
being here.
Alex.
Um, and then I think a question that from One Stop Co-op Shop, which I think tags along with this, is about replayability.
Mm.
So the question was, have you had any recent thoughts to maximize replayability into the game? And I think these sorts of questions about how you're building your character and as you're playing through the campaign, what are the choices that you're making? I think there are like story choices as you go. And I think there are also ordering choices just because you end up maybe at a similar point, the path that you take to get there could be very different, and I think could feel very different.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one factor. Also, remember there are six different paths that you can play, and you're only playing one, and the permutations that you have
Mm-hmm.
between a two-player game or a three-player game, or four-player game, or a true solo game, there's a lot of options
Yeah,
there.
and just to be clear, when you say there are six different paths, we're talking about the classes in Arydia are called
Yeah.
paths. So not six paths on the map, six
No.
classes. So you have your warrior class, the path of valor, your rogue class, the path of shadow, and so on. Um, and then as far as the game goes, like you have like a world map, and how you choose to explore that map, what you encounter along the way, um, like you may not see everything in the first playthrough. You could. We have designed it. If you're like, I want to play through this game one time and I want to see everything, you will see the majority of things in that one playthrough. But you will not see the majority of like what your character is up to. There's like Ira said, all the combat skills. You won't see like if you're not playing as a ranger, you're not going to see any of the ranger stuff. And so I feel like there's a lot of content to play through in that sense that will make it feel fresh. And I think one of the things is that we have really gone for asymmetry in the path slash class design. So like the combat's like if you're doing say that combat against the rats, it will feel different if you're at range like firing bows versus setting traps as the rogue, like those sorts of permutations. um, yeah, so I think there's
Yeah,
yeah, I don't.
yeah, no, that's a great answer. Good. And I also, one other thing that we haven't touched on yet in terms of replayability, which is maybe obvious, but just to call it out, is there's randomness. There's luck of what loot you get, what
Mm-hmm.
sort of things show up in the markets in town, the travel deck that you're going through and that experience, you're experiencing combat in terms of the dice rolls that you get. So even one combat, exactly the same class build, exactly the same player count, like even that you can replay that multiple times because there's randomness
Yeah,
that adds, spice to the game. So um okay, I hope that gives some good answers
yeah.
about that.
So there's another question in the chat from Brian Newton. Thank you, Brian, for the question. He says, how solo friendly is the game? um, I I'm very pleased. Like this is something that we have really focused on. There's a huge, I think I would still say, growing solo movement in board games, and We wanted Arydia to be like a premier experience for you. That this is going to feel very good for true solo, and so we have given the option. Not only can you play the game solo, um, but you can play it as a single adventurer if you want. Uh, and so that has been a monumental effort of balance to get all the combats. Like we have designed these combats so that you can play them at 4 to 1 player, basically, and for them to feel balanced, fair, and fun. That being said, solo is going to be the most difficult way to play if you play true solo. Um, but also, like, I think that's the right call because when you're playing true solo, turns go faster. If you end up losing a combat, like it is much faster to like get back into things. Where if you're playing in 4 player, it's going to probably be. Would you say 4 player is easier or 3? I think 4 is probably.
4 is easier than 3.
Yeah, just because you have a larger hit pool. But there's some really, I would say Ira has done some really ingenious work with combat design as far as making monsters that do that are more tricky in 4 player, but equally scale into 1 player without any weird, like you don't have to do weird math or like it's all behind the scenes as far as you're concerned. The monster just does a thing, but combat balance wise, it is really really smart. So very cool. Yeah, I'm sorry about the stream. Sometimes goes back and forth here. I think there's something going on with the internet. It could be my kids are watching videos. I don't know.
Um, yeah, yeah. We've both been thinking a lot about True Solo from the beginning, and we know that a lot of solo players will play multi-handed, and that's totally supported as well. You absolutely can play, 1 player multi-handed,
Yes. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we want people to know you can play 1 player, 1 exile, and yes, your hit point pool is going to be, much less than the hit point pool available if you're playing 4 players.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fun. It's still really fun. We've done tons of playtests as True Solo. We know that it works. It's a really fun challenge. It is a challenge, but we think it's a fun challenge.
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed.
yeah, I wonder. Yeah, let's maybe take some more from chat, Cody. Does that seem
Yeah.
good? Or
So I don't know how to say this name. Aomer drop? No. Iroma Dop. I'm saying this totally wrong. But he's asking about loot, and I know other people had submitted questions about loot. Can we find the
yep.
people who are talking about loot? I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure we
sure.
think them.
Yeah, loot question. So we got an anonymous question. We got a question from Alex Banks, and we got a question from 900Z.
Yep.
That was basically, so just acknowledging those people. Thank you for submitting the question. Basically about loot.
Yeah. Do you want me to answer? Do you want to?
Well, I can say a couple things.
Sure.
So there are sort of 2 categories of loot in the game. There's what we're calling basic loot, which is perfectly good loot. It is the key about basic loot is that it's shared among the party. So anybody in the party can use basic loot. And you get that from defeating monsters at foes, and also sometimes through quests or NPCs or various story interactions.
Yeah.
So it's a generic anybody can use it sort of item.
Yeah.
And then there's path loot. And so at certain points in the story or certain times when you defeat a particularly challenging monster, there'll be a path icon, a path chest icon on the map or on a card. And then everybody, regardless of number of players, gets to draw 1 from their loot box. And so that way, you have your own special stuff. It's, customized art, it's customized, layout, and there's some asymmetry among the armor pieces, and then there's a lot of asymmetry between the weapons and other special tools that the different classes have. For example, the ranger gets a bow. Nobody else gets sort of a long range bow. The ranger, that's like special to the ranger. Other people have various, ranged attack options, but sort of the bow and quiver is a special thing for the ranger.
Yeah. And I think design-wise, we kind of vacillated. We're like, we want everybody to have their own stuff. And we're like, yeah, but it's really nice to like pull something out and go, oh, I could use that. and like have the party kind of like who should get this thing. And we did a lot of versioning in the past of like, okay, we do it all so it's like everybody has their own box and there's no like moment where you like share. And we're like, that's not good. Let's put everything in. And then all the classes felt watered down, where it's like, oh, I drew a bow. I guess I'm a ranger now. And that felt bad. And so we were trying to figure out like we really want an emphasis on class feeling distinct, so that if I'm playing a ranger, I want to feel like a ranger, not like a warrior because I had these weird draws. And so that's when we ended up on this sort of two category system, where basic is probably the wrong word. I don't know. Pathless sort of items.
Generic.
Generic. Yeah, as far as like anybody can use them. Um, but we sort of settled on this sort of two categories of like anybody could use these items out of this box. So when you draw it out, you're like, oh, that's really cool. This could work for me or you. And then like, oh, maybe we got two of these things, but we can split them up. And then we also have these nice moments where everybody's drawing out of their own personal treasure chest, and you're getting something that's uniquely designed for you at your level, and it's gonna feel like an upgrade specifically for the ranger or for the mage, or right. And so I feel like the loot does both of that.
Yeah. And also, just to mention sort of the drop in, drop out aspect of the game,
Oh yeah.
that is also the way that if you have somebody joining your campaign part of the way through, you look around and you see, oh, everybody else has this many loot items from those, at that level. You as the new player get that too,
Yeah,
for your
just
class, because
go through and make your draws.
right.
Yeah.
And then you can share around the basic items. That's fine. You can share those too. But it's just, that is yet another way of supporting drop in, drop out play.
Yeah.
There's a follow-up loot question. Will there be loot that requires your character to be certain levels before being able to use it, or having unlocked certain skills for use? That's a question from Family Meeple. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but the basic idea is you will be able to use the loot that you get.
Yeah.
That's sort of a core design idea.
Yeah.
That, like, we had versions where you would pull something, you're like, oh, I can't use it yet. But that's basically, you get to use what you get.
Yeah. And I think a core design was our goal with the treasure chest is when you pull something out, you feel happy. And so if you pull something out and it's like, I can't use this because I like designed my character differently, that doesn't feel good. Specifically for the path, right? So sometimes for the universal, like basic loot, you're going to pull it out and go, I don't know that I want to change my weapon to, this weapon type. So that you may have some moments there. With basic loot, you can just sell it off and get some money if it's not something that's useful. And then you can go to a store and buy some loot that maybe is valuable, which also feels good. But we really wanted, every time you're pulling out of your path, to feel good, to feel level appropriate, and to be immediately useful. So you're like, oh man, I can't wait to like get in the next combat so I can use my new thing. So yeah.
Great. Maybe we should take a question from the earlier submitted questions, Cody. Or do you want to talk a little more about it, or a new question?
If you've got one, I'm looking to see if there's anything in the chat. I'm such a slow reader.
I feel like there's been a couple questions in chat about influences and inspiration, and there were several people who submitted questions in advance about that.
Yeah.
So which games, if any, were an influence or inspiration for Arydia? A variety of people asked questions like that. Rock from Slovenia, Max, Milan, thank you for that question. I think I might have seen something in the chat too. So do you want to talk a little bit about your inspiration, Cody?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I think it all starts for me with my mom reading me Lord of the Rings at a young age, and like I remember being terrified of like the whites, and like it was a little scary, but then like, oh my gosh, what an adventure! This is like so fun, and just like from there, like learning about role playing games. I played a lot of computer role playing games growing up. So like Neverwinter Nights, Baldur's Gate. I played a ton of like old MMOs that nobody's ever heard of, like Nexus, Kingdom of the Winds, and like just MUDs. I played a lot of like text-based adventure MUDs, and those were really big influences for me as far as like MUDs in particular. One of the core designs in Arydia is when you're exploring. So you explore um, in MUDs, you explore room by room, and each room has a little description of like what's in the room. So you see like a window on the left, and there's like an old guard, grizzled and haggard, sitting by the fire, and like these cool little descriptions. You're like, oh, I'm in this room. I can picture myself there. And Arydia has like a very similar. I'll try not to do any spoiler stuff, but like when you explore a location, you like draw up a thing, and it'll like have some text on one side that like kind of puts you in that mindset, and that's directly like from the MUDs that I used to play. And then you flip it over and you get to see it in Arydia. You get to like see the thing, and then you're like moving your character around on it. So just like I think that aspect of adventure and exploration that I experienced in RPGs, huge influence. I think D&D is had a big influence as far as like one of the things that we really want to do with Arydia is we wanted to, like, as a core design, have one hand on the past and one hand on the future. The past being like nostalgia, things we loved as a kid, things that like harken back to like that like adventure and like like the beginning of Lord of the Rings where you're in the Shire and just like those sorts of feelings we want to evoke, going into Moria or whatever, like, and at the same time we want to have a hand on the future, which is like we want modern game design. We want the game to feel fun. We want it to play quickly. We want you to we want to surprise and delight you with systems that are like, wow, I've never seen that in a game. Maybe you'll say that. So like these are sort of our core designs, and I feel like I've got off track. I don't know what else.
Those were great.
Okay.
Those were awesome. I mean, I completely that really resonates with me. I also a couple of other games that I know we've talked about, Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Oh yeah.
The fact that like there's open world exploration and it feels like wherever you go, any nook and cranny, there's something interesting to explore. But also, it is unlike games in which the level changes depending on your level. Like the world is there, like the world exists. And if you show up and you stumble across something early on that it's like way too powerful for you, like you better run away because otherwise, like it will defeat you. It's not like, and then later on, if you come back to like your old, your old haunts, now that you've leveled up, you're gonna be like, I'm way more powerful than
I am
these
the king of
things.
this place. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something to, I feel like some RPGs do level scaling.
Yeah.
Others don't. I feel like Zelda is just one example of one that does not do level scaling, and you really do sometimes have to
I
run
don't
away.
know. I think there is some modulated. Well, we don't need to talk about Zelda. That's fine. I think
Okay.
I.
Uh,
Yeah. All right.
I also think there we have a design philosophy, I think, around what happens from a story perspective
Mm-hmm.
relative to combats that's more aligned with the way Zelda does it, where there is a story, but we're also giving players the freedom to sort of explore on their,
Yeah.
on their
Yeah.
own.
And I would say Skyrim has been a big influence. Like the Elder Scrolls games, I like. Honestly, for me, Morrowind before Oblivion and Skyrim, like Morrowind was so cool. Just like being able to, I can go like you can go around and you can like have your adventures and you can do what the main characters are saying, but also you can like do your own adventures and sort of the core story of Arydia is kind of like how I love to play those games, which is like the core story is to go out and like have adventures, and so it kind of plays into that like yeah, I don't know, just that idea that side quests, like the world is full of stuff out there, and we just want you to go explore and have fun. So
Yeah. I want to say one more thing about inspiration. I don't even know. I think I might have mentioned this to you, Cody, but this is a long time ago when I was first sort of noodling around on the combat system after you had worked on it obviously a lot, and then you sort of was like, hey, take a pass at the combat system. One of my inspirations was Tetris. Because we had these hit grids for the
yeah,
monsters, and you're like trying to fill them in with wounds as you battle them, um, and you had sort of these Tetris like patterns that you're fitting in, trying to fit as efficiently as possible to fill up the hit grid. So the combat system has a little bit of inspiration from Tetris too. So
it's a
and
good
there's a game called
inspiration.
Fits, yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, and I guess Zaya, Brian was asking in chat about did
Okay.
you draw from your experience being Zaya? And I do think there's a little bit of that like Tetrisy
Oh, for
experience in
sure.
Zaya as you're building the ship.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Oh, yeah. Just I think there's something fun about the spatial physical aspect of board games that video games can come close. And I don't have a lot of experience with VR games, but I know they're kind of in that realm a little bit. But just that physical aspect um, with board games, it's been really fun. Like having hit patterns is one of the things that like basically our whole combat stemmed off of like I want my sword. I don't want to do 5 damage. Like and then get a new sword that does 6 damage. Like I want a sword that like does something to the monster. And so all of our weapons have attack patterns. So like a sword cuts from left to right, and that matters. Like the way the monsters are designed, like if you're coming across like critical points, that can trigger extra damage because you were able to like cleverly swipe your sword across the monster. Where like if I'm playing as a cleric and I've got a staff, like I'm hitting down from the top of the monster and that damage kind of spreads out. You can imagine them hitting like in a bashing motion. And so like each weapon has a unique pattern, and when you like get a better version of that, that's gonna like be your pattern. It changes some. Like we're gonna like have swords always feel like swords, but like instead of one, two, like there's marked differences between an axe and a sword, rather than just like it does piercing damage or it doesn't do piercing damage. Like it like I don't know. Yeah, it's really fun. And not only that, but I feel like Ira has been able to like, oh yeah, these skeletons, they're gonna like you can crush them with a staff so much easier than you can with like a dagger. And you're like, yep, we designed that. That's really cool. So
yeah, yeah. So that yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there. I saw a question in chat which I think might be fun to take now, which is Michael Hansen asks, why a square grid instead of a hex grid? Specifically for the location maps. The
yeah,
overland travel is hex, but
yep.
they're asking about the. Do you want to talk about that, Cody, or should I have an answer? But I'm curious to hear your
Sure, go
answer
for
too.
it. I want to know what your answer is.
I think there are two answers. For me, there are two main reasons why we went with a square grid. One is nostalgia and sort of feeling like, traditional RPGs, a lot of them use a square grid. I think that's one. Um, but I think the main reason is that on a uh, limited, like square inch physical object, to maximize the number of sort of the distance between 2 points within your combat system, you get more range by using a square grid that does not include diagonals. So basically, if you imagine I have these two corners of the map, I'm counting this way using square grid. Like the distance between this is like 7 by 8. So I'm like 15 squares apart. That leads to more interesting combat interactions than if I had a hex grid, in which case I can just draw a diagonal line effectively between these two locations, and it's much shorter than 15. So we're actually making a more efficient use of the physical component by using a square grid with non-diagonal movement.
Which you would think, oh, well, just make it bigger. One of the things that we've really strived for is like, I want this game to be playable. And on like a normal-ish sized table. And so like the design of the squares, like how big to make the squares. We ended up on 22 millimeter squares because we took um, the largest map in the game. I won't tell you how big it is, and shrunk it down. Or not shrunk it down, but like adjusted the size of the squares so that that large space could fit on a normal table, and then made sure that it was like a good enough size that it's not like, oh, this is really small. And then like sort of built backwards from there. So everything sort of keyed off of that one location. Um, yeah, and there were versions like in 2016, 2015 that had a hex grid that I play tested that, and it was fine, but I didn't feel like it added anything significant to the combat where I was like, I feel like everything I want to do with the combat is doable in this square grid. And like Ira said, like actually by removing diagonals and just using orthogonal movement and counting, you actually get a lot more space. So yeah, very fun.
There's a question from Family Meeple. World maps ×3. Will each map be a different self-contained story or campaign? And I think it's worth clarifying. It's all one campaign, right?
One campaign. One campaign.
Yeah. But yeah, multiple maps. Okay, should we take maybe a question from the pre-submitted ones, Cody?
Sure.
This is from Leon Cross. Would you consider a live playthrough of the introduction quest with the Fire Games crew after receiving the PPC, the pre-production copy?
Definitely, yes. I think that would be super fun. We'll see what we can do when that arrives. As far as like maybe it would just be maybe Ira will Skype in, or I don't know. We'll see what we'll do. But yeah, we would love to. We'll show it off as much as we can. I will say we're not going to spoil anything. So like basically whatever's on the Kickstarter campaign page is fair game, but anything other than that we won't be sharing. Sorry. We want you to discover it on your own.
So maybe another.
Hi, Leon. I'm sorry that you're in the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
So just wanted to shout out to Leon. You've been so good in all the Kickstarter comments and stuff. It's been really nice having you a part of this journey. And I hope whatever's going on that you have a swift recovery.
Nice. How about this one? This is from Marco. How do you keep yourselves objective playtesting over and over and not just getting used to stuff being fiddly? So I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
You wanna answer first, Cody, or should I?
No, you go. I feel like I got the last one.
Oh, it's a great question. I would say there are at least two things that I keep in mind. One is when you're playtesting, not only later playtests, but even from the beginning, you're sort of imagining yourself in the mind of a player, and there's this sort of you go from being a designer or developer into sort of an imaginary world where you're trying to sort of role play a player playing your game. And so that's a skill that we're using throughout. That's a skill that we hone, that we practice. That's constantly happening.
Yeah.
So I think that applies throughout the process. And then I'd say the other very important process is we have multiple perspectives. We have a lot of people um, internally playtesting, getting feedback from them. We're trying to avoid groupthink. So we have after every combat playtest, we have a Google form where the playtester, if it's Cody or me or David or Alex or Luke, anybody, fills it out independently before sharing their feedback with the group. We have weekly meetings where we're sharing feedback with the group and we're iterating and making progress. But the form is like immediately afterwards, you get to give your own feedback to avoid groupthink. And there are times when after a playtest, we'll say, we'll review it in the following week, and we'll say, oh yeah, I found this, and somebody else will say, oh yeah, I found that too, and oh yeah, I found that too. And we're like, okay, very clear direction. We know we're gonna change it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes somebody will say, I played this, it was great. It was really spot on. And then somebody else will say, really? Because when I played it, it was a mess. Uh, and then we sort of drill in on, well, what was the difference between those experiences? Was it just randomness? Was it like player count? Was it a particular class? Was it a particular build of that class?
Skill
We sort of
set.
drill into that.
Yeah, yeah.
Skill sets, exactly.
Mhm.
So I guess those are my answers. One, it's a skill we practice all the time as designers, and two, multiple perspectives.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot from the combat point of view. I think also um, I'm I've been a lot focused on sort of story and world experience, and I think for me it's very similar. Um, a couple things that I do for writing is like write a location, an encounter, an experience. So you're like meeting these characters, you're doing these things, do a first pass of it, move on to something else, and then come back to it. Helps a lot. I mean, that's like common writing, 101. That's nothing new, but that also helps to be like, oh, I asked the player to like draw a card before they should have, and like those sorts of things, just to iron it out. It so much helps just to step away from something and return to it later. So is that Luke? It looks like
I don't know. I feel
it's
like I recognize that icon, but
it's definitely his Discord thing. If it's not him, that would be
nice.
funny.
Maybe Luke is in chat also, in which case, hello, Luke.
Possible hello to Luke.
So on that note of playtesting, we had a question from Al, from Ken. Is there a way to sign up or volunteer for the external playtesting? Which is really nice. Thank you for being interested in that. We will announce it. So you haven't missed anything. We'll let you know as soon as it's ready.
Yep.
Maybe another quick one as we're winding down. An anonymous person asked, are the Zaya pledges we backed tied to the Arydia timeline? Do you
Oh,
want to take that, Cody?
yeah. So the goal with the Zion pledges has been we understand like getting Zaya, especially out of the U.S., is really expensive, and after COVID, container shipping is very expensive. You guys, if you're in the chat, probably have some experience with other Kickstarters knowing this sort of thing. Like shipping's expensive now, and so yeah, the short answer is yes. When we go to manufacture Arydia, we are also going to manufacture this print run of Zaya. It will be the same as the rest of the print runs of Zaya that we've done, so there's no like changes to it. It's just we're printing it at the same time so that we can load it into the same cargo ships that are, or cargo containers that are going around the world to distribute Arydia, and we'll be able to ship from the same shipping locations worldwide, basically. So yes, unfortunately, we're not able to just like print and send stuff immediately with Zaya, and so yeah, it'll go out at the same time.
I have a question that I want to answer.
Yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
was this was submitted by Andrew, and he said this question is for Ira with his collaboration process with Cody. My question is, how has Cody involved you in the collaboration with Arydia compared to my work on other projects? So I'm gonna have to say some nice things about Cody. I'm sorry, Cody, you're gonna have to endure it. But you know, Arydia is the game that I've worked on longest in my life, actually. And I think that's probably true for Cody also.
Almost.
Maybe,
I
maybe
think
not.
Zaya was 9 years to completion, and this will be 10. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I haven't been working on it in 10 years, but it's been many years. You know, Cody and I have been working on it together.
I
And
think it was
so
2018 that you jumped on.
yeah. So like 5 years. That's a
Yeah, coming up
lot.
on 6 years.
That's a
That's crazy.
Yeah, so that's a long-term project, and I think, um, you know, I think we have something special. You know, I think it's partly that it seems like we have a really nice Venn diagram overlap of our interests and of our strengths. In that there are plenty of things where like we can both do it, but then there are some other things where we really know like let's lean into that from Cody or let's lean into that from Ira, you know, and I think we both respect each other's strengths in that way. Um, and that has formed a really productive, I think, collaboration.
It's so
And I'll
fun. I
just
think that like
yeah.
that's the short of it is it's just so much fun to work together. Like we always enjoy like calling each other and checking in and like um yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
I'm going to say one other thing because
okay, sorry.
I think this is the I won't spend too long, but this is the last thing, which is
Okay.
I think one of Cody's one of his strengths is being able to articulate a vision very clearly while still giving freedom to me as a team member to use my own creativity, bring my own ideas to it, um, while still maintaining the vision of the game. And there are times when he'll like give me a design direction and I'll be like, yeah, I'm going to go do that. And then I come back with it. It's like, yeah, I nailed it. That was awesome. And then sometimes I'm like, I did it right. And he's like, well, you sort of like this missed. Like, and he's able to articulate the things that are really the core essence of the design. And I think that leads to just a very pleasant working experience, a very pleasant collaboration where you have freedom, but also vision. So there you go. I'm glad you asked. I'm glad I got a chance. There's more. I could go on for a long time, but
Please
I'll
don't.
stop there. Okay, there you go. All right.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, here's a more physical question, which is this question is for Cody, and it's about the head snapping in place mechanism.
Oh yeah.
Yes, that's a technical term. This is from Andrew. You know, have we seen the prototype? Can we see them? What's the
Yeah, I
status of
mean,
that? Because
so
that's a pretty special feature.
these are what we currently have. These are painted samples, not mechanical samples. So the actual like click in of the head is not built into these. These were these were designed around is the paint the right shade of the color? Did we apply it in the correct areas? Um, the current so all of the miniatures in the game have been approved both at a like sculpting level and at a paint level. They were approved, I think, sometime 2 months ago. Anyways. So right now they are in the process of like mold creation, and the next step should be getting full samples. They might send mechanical samples and then full samples. I'm not sure what the step is, but getting a very satisfying like click is very important to me. So I will detail the process and get some nice videos when we have samples to show. But these are basically like 3D printed and then painted, so at a very high resolution. but they're brittle if they tried to put the mechanism onto these, they would snap basically. So, yeah.
All
I
right,
don't
I
know
think
how much time you have since we started late. Should we go a little late, or do you have a meeting to be?
yeah. No, I can stay longer if people have
Okay.
more questions. I mean, we've gotten through a lot of the questions
Okay.
previously submitted.
I just wanted to make sure we got
Um,
through any of bigger questions. So
yeah, if you see any other ones you want to jump into, Cody, then feel
I
free.
my
Uh,
question thing died because I had to load up all these pages.
oh, no problem. We've gone through the majority of them,
Okay. Okay.
or a lot of them, maybe not the majority, but a good number. There was one quick question for me. I'm happy to. I appreciate the question. Somebody asked me, Ira, can you tell us a little bit about your next up project? I think that was probably a reference to Civ Dice that Cody sort of teased when I visited
I did not tease any
Cody.
names.
It's code name Civ Dice. It's a prototype at this point. But basically it's a civilization game. And I don't know anybody if you've heard of Star Wars Destiny, but and there are other games that use this mechanic, but there's a mechanic of sort of dice as actions, and sort of the concept of this prototype that I've been working on very sporadically, but here and there is basically using dice as actions, but then putting them on the map. So there's
It's
like sort
very
of a
cool. It's
world
very cool.
modular world map that you're exploring. Yeah, but just to be clear, like back burner priority is Arydia for sure. So once we get Arydia out, then maybe we'll have more time to noodle on
Then
it.
we're gonna go on to all
But
these other projects.
yeah, sure. There will be exciting things, but I think we're all really enjoying Iridia and having the chance to make it as good as we can be,
Yeah.
as we can in the time that we have, but really trying to maximize the efficiency on Iridia right now. So that's definitely our
Agreed.
really our only focus at this point.
Agreed. Um, Couple quick questions from chat. Stewie asks approximate hours of gameplay. We're still estimating 40 hours for the campaign. We're just about to jump into full campaign playtesting, where we're hoping to get like a spectrum of we're gonna have David do like a speed run, see how quickly can he get through the entire game, and we'll have people who've never touched Arydia play through it in a group and time them. Right now, we've been doing internal playtesting, so it's all skewed because people know the content. Like Alex and Luke playtested all the combats before they playtested the campaign, and so we don't have an exact number for you, but when we do, we'll let you know. But we're aiming at 40. My guess is it might be more. It might be a lot more depending on how you choose to explore. Um, and then, so thank you, Stewie, for that question. And then Clayton had a question. I saw you had asked this earlier, and I wanted to answer it. But how long does it take you to get to max level? Um, and so, one of our design goals is we don't want you to hit max level too soon, and we don't want you to hit max level too late. And so the goal is to hit it at just the right time, which is near the end of the game, basically, is where we're aiming. Because you can, if you want, we have a system, there's a job deck where you can take jobs that are completely optional. And you can do things like fight monsters or whatever with these sort of one-off jobs. And there, one of our goals is we don't want you to have to grind in Arydia. You just go to the next thing, and we have given you experience and loot required to be able to complete the next hurdle for the most part. Definitely, we want you to have those moments of wow, I am not enough for this. I need to leave this place, and I will come back here later. But for the things that are of your level, you're gonna hopefully have enough experience and stuff that you'll be able to cruise through it, right? And cruise through it is the wrong word. It will be an appropriate challenge for you. And so if you hit max level before where we wanted you to, then like the rest of the game wouldn't feel challenging enough. And so Ira has done a lot of math, and we've talked a lot about like, well, how many combats are in this? How much total experience can you get in this location? And so we've like have a very intentional experience point threshold for all the leveling points. And so our goal is near the end of the game, you'll hit near max level. We don't want you to hit max level as you finish the game, because then you're like, well, I just got this, like, I just leveled up. So we want you to hit it before the end of the game. And so you'll hit max level and then have some more stuff to do, but not all the stuff to do. So do you feel like that's fair?
Yeah, yeah, I think that was great. And I think just to highlight one of the points there is that we know the total possible XP in the game. It is a finite amount. It's a lot. There's a lot of stuff, but it is finite. And so we can do sort of the scaling math to say, well, if a player, fully explores every location at every stage of the game, then they'll be at this point. This is sort of the high watermark. And then there's like, if the player does the bare minimum, they're trying to do a speed run, they're not doing anything side quest. This is sort of where there'll be minimum. And then we're sort of like, well, this is where we think the average sort of, they're not going to 100% complete everything before moving on, but they'll do most of it. This is where we think they'll be. So we have that like range as you go through each act of the game, and we're using that as our guideline for what to do. Also, if you're speedrunning, like there may be a point where like actually I'm a little under leveled.
I'm excited for speedrunning because
yeah,
I
it'll be
don't
interesting.
exactly know. Like, if you're playing through it for your first time, it's opaque in that like you don't know exactly where you need to go next a lot of the time, just because that's like the nature of the game. You have to explore, learn stuff, and then you're like, oh, okay. And so speedrunning, we haven't tried speedrunning yet, and that will be interesting to see like what actually can you speedrun. And anyways, I wanted to say one other thing, like design wise, this is one aspect where Ira was talking about, like we have that Venn diagram of like our strengths, and this is definitely like an Ira strength. And like, no, this is so good because like my design before Ira was here was like, I'll just dole out an amount of experience. There's so much stuff going on. Like, I'll just sort of wing it as far as like, and then I'll get some playtest feedback and be like, okay. But I was like, no, we have numbers in math. We can like add all this up, get some numbers, and then like make a path, and we can know for sure things.
We're still going to playtest. Like playtesting is still important.
Yeah, yeah. And
yeah,
it's not like oh, this is crazy math beyond my brain or something like that. It's just like the way Ira can take systems, analyze them, and then like make significant implementations. It's brilliant, and the game is far better for these things rather than just like you'll level up, it's fine. Where you would you'd hit max level mid game and you'd be like, wow, good job, Cody. So there we are.
Thanks.
It's good. Yeah, I just wanted to answer real quick, Night Hunter. I know I just wanted to say about my son Judah. We've had, just a lot of support from the Far Off Games community, and it's been super meaningful to me. And Judah right now, he's been doing really well. He's on a upswing, just getting stronger every day. He started karate. Him and his brother are doing karate, which is great. And yeah, he's looking forward to playing Arydia with him. And yeah, so thank you, everybody. Huge. Yeah. So thank you.
I think that's a nice note to end on. We got a lot of good comments. Thank you for everybody who submitted your questions. If we didn't get to it, we're sorry. We'll definitely try and answer more questions in the future. A lot of good energy and prayers in the submitted questions too. So yeah,
Yeah.
really nice getting to talk to everybody.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Until next time, yeah, we'll see you again soon on the paths we dare tread. All right. Bye
Thank you
bye.
all. Bye.